Best of r/ Tales from Tech Support episode 127. Subscribe for edit videos daily. We are getting a lot of automation where I work. Most of it requires network accessibility. Someone decides to put two parts of the same line at opposite ends of the building. Each has a router that allows all the controllers on the line to talk to each other. There is also a line out of the router on the one side to get performance metrics out. No talk between the controllers can take place out the one side. It's always internal on the LAN side. The first thing I see is that line A at some point needs to talk on the internal LAN to line B, and there is nothing between them to allow it to do so. I point this out to my boss and he sighs and get a pencil and paper out to try and explain it to me. I keep pointing out that there is nothing between the two lines to allow them to communicate to each other. And apparently the routers they provided are dumb routers and there is no way to talk out the one side over our network to the other line. He keeps claiming I don't know what I'm talking about and keeps drawing the same picture over and over. I keep drawing a dotted line between the two stating that part is missing. He insists I am wrong, so I just give up. Months later both lines are fully set up ready to test. The techs from the company providing the machine come on site and immediately point out that it won't work. The two LANs are unable to communicate. A quick measurement shows they are about 400 feet apart, beyond the advised limit of the max length of an Ethernet cable. They point out that typically companies put these two lines together, not in different areas. The techs are here ringing up their on-site tech bill at the rate of about $500 an hour just standing around, and we have no way to get the lines to talk to each other. I'd like to say I kept quiet and like to say I didn't say I told you so, but I did. To get things, hopefully, running we run an Ethernet cable between the two lines. It turns out to be closer to 500 feet when we route it correctly through our networking trays and not straight across. It works, but occasionally has issues and we have to reboot the routers to get them talking again. I advise they get some fiber cable and a couple of transceivers to make them work correctly. I'm quickly shot down because of the cost involved. So the operators must reset the routers every time there is a glitch. They are lucky to make it through a day without a reset. Both lines grind to a halt for 5-10 minutes whenever the routers are rebooting. Eventually they decide the entire thing isn't working anyway and not saving them any money, largely due to the continuing resets every day. So the entire thing is just sitting there. Oh, and someone didn't realize that the vacuum grippers on the robotic arms can't maintain suction when they grab a part where there is a seam. It drops pieces all over the place. The entire thing must be shut down in order to allow operators safe entry into the cage to pick up the stuck pieces. Each piece can cost upwards of $100 or more, and dropping them usually cracks them. So for a while they hire a temp to sit there and look at each tray and roll the pieces that have a seam pointed upwards so the vacuum arm can grip it properly. So much for automation. Thank you. Next. I was the IT director for a large company starting in 2000. It was a great job, but there were some fun times getting things organized. Each division had its own network before I got there and migrated everything to one. This one division was still using Lotus Notes strictly for email. The division president was a nice guy but thought he knew more than he did. Exclamation point. For example, his laptop kept crashing and he couldn't figure out why. But he wouldn't let us look at it because he didn't want anyone else to see his confidential financial info. Okay, I finally found out why it was crashing when he made an offhanded comment to his assistant about emailing his backups to his home AOL email address. It turns out he was trying to email his entire C drive to his home email. I didn't care how he was trying to do it. I just told him, stop. Same guy wanted to access his email in real time while flying coast to coast. Keep in mind he's asking in early 2000. I told him with tongue firmly planted in cheek I didn't think we had any network cables long enough to reach his plane. Can't you order one for me? Thank you. Next. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, Part 5. TL. Doctor, I'm a contractor at large client, LC. I'm helping them remediate audit findings in a difficult environment. I recently got my hands on the audit. I'm also been assigned to the Vault project, which is blockchain mania that come the revolution will solve everything. I think that the Vault is vaporware. I'm wondering how many people know. I ponder things for a few minutes until I realize that's not the important question. The real question is, what's it to me? If I tell Howard, the project lead and highest ranking LC employee I know, I'll either be labeled a pain in the ass or be forced to be more involved in the project. Lose/lose. From my point of view, the vault actually isn't relevant. It's not operational, so it can't have audit findings. Since it doesn't respond to the audit, it's not my problem, according to the contract. Speaking of contracts, I'd like to have some proof that I did things. We're going to need findings closed. And I'm going to keep my mouth shut. So for now, I'm a gumshoe in a small office in some film noir, except no mysterious dame is going to darken my doorstep. I'm going to find issues and close them. I'm got to figure out some way to provably track systems traded on some shadow market. And I have a login to the Slack channel where it happens. The Slack seems to have a handful of closed channels. The /random and /general are dedicated to shitposting and complaints about senior management at large C-leant, LC. I leave it open. I start reading the audit report. It's not like any professional audit report I've ever read. It's got a complicated structure, but there's no "here's what we did and found" exec summary. Instead it feels like a John Brunner rewrite of the Silmarillion familiar themes, but told in a jangly, short attention span manner. And nobody cares about the characters to remember their names. It opens with a preamble about the intentions of the writer and how they initially believed in LC's goals of providing goods and services with the quality, pricing and delivery expected of an oligopoly. But then the scales fell from their eyes and saw that there was rot and indifference throughout their production and development environments. Then there were findings. Lots and lots of findings. Some make sense, others are ants labeled as findings. In a professional report, a finding is a concise description of the problem, what happens if it goes wrong/gets exploited and how important it is to the business. Our writer also includes backstory. As an example, finding 252, incorrect and non-compliant time servers. Description: LC's operations lead has picked wrong time servers. They have picked time servers in the EU instead of North America. Risk high. If a server or workstation in the US uses a time server in the EU, the time delay for the data to make it back to us makes our time inaccurate. Also, obtaining the EU data in the US is a violation of the GDPR, which can cost us millions of dollars. I told Sophie on the multiple occasions and she told me that I should find more important findings. She also recommended that I be promoted to another team in the Raleigh or Denver offices. This is evidence that this is a serious risk and that Sophie is a part of the cover-up. And there are hundreds of these findings. If I'm abso of milk, I've found that the mysterious Aristotle book on humor was instead ripped off angry stand-up routines performed at an airport hotel bar open mic night. Now I have a map. I can pick issues to close and actually fix cross items off a list. If I show progress, I might be able to get out from under Arash and Ian and the Vault project. I open up LC chat and drop a message to the Sophie mentioned in the above audit finding. Me, Sophie. I'm law techie and I'm trying to close out some audit findings. Do you have a minute? No response. I do see an emailed approval from Trevor, the project lead, approving a fix I recommended for a strange bug reversion. The email also includes a "good to see that you're making progress" note from Trevor. Yay. I can scratch one audit finding off. Several hundred more to go. I realize I might be able to fix 2 problems today. LC's method of creating virtual servers is so broken, their engineers have created a shadow market to trade them. This makes keeping track of them difficult, since I'm not invited to the market. Many years ago, when I was a sysadmin, the way we'd figure out who owned unlabeled systems was to change the message of the day to "unless you claim this system in a week, I'm powering it off and reformatting it." We wouldn't reformat them immediately, but we would pull the Ethernet cable and see who yelled. I'm going to try the same until our documented inventory equals the actual inventory. I draft an email to Trevor asking for the right to threaten shutdowns, giving people 2 weeks to tell us the rightful owner and what it did. He responds with a "let me get air cover. Thanks, bomber command." I get a response from Sophie. Sophie, what audit are you referring to and what is this about? Me, it's the large one. You're referenced in finding 252, about time servers. Sophie. Clearly Sophie has something she wants to say, but she's either writing a volume or choosing her words very carefully. Sophie, that asshole. Carefully chosen. Me. I see. It seemed ridiculous, but I had to ask just in case you were a part of the Great Time Server conspiracy. Sophie. Sophie, you're making a joke. Don't. Nobody finds this funny. Me. I don't understand. What firm did this audit, so I never recommend them? Sophie. It was internal. Me. Internal audit wrote this? Sophie. No. Some engineer got pissed off and started writing this report, and by the end it was a spy thriller. Me. So they fired them? Sophie. No. They moved him to a new project. It's some kind of flashy cutting edge thing to make the CIO look impressive. I don't pay attention until it affects my budget. Me. Why'd they move him? Sophie. Well, I think management wasn't sure what else to do. Me. Makes sense if you fire him. He is a whistleblower. Keep him on the team, it sows discord. Moving him makes sense. Sophie. I just went through my email for the announcement. Ian got moved to a project called The Vault. Me. To be continued. Thank you. Next. Here's a guy who was way ahead of his time in that he was concerned about the environment and wasting paper. This happened in 1998. I was the chief IT guy for the organization. A VP, nice guy, older, and not too tech savvy, at a branch office came to our headquarters for a meeting and dragged a large box of papers into the boardroom. The box easily had the equivalent of 3-4 reams of paper in it. He immediately started berating me for wasting all this paper and unnecessarily destroying trees. Asking him to explain himself, he showed me all the papers in the box, which were nothing but emails. It turns out he never used his computer. He told his admin assistants to print his emails so he could read them. Thousands of them over the course of a year. He didn't seem to get the point why he should just read them himself and not bother printing them. Thank you. Next. Background. I work in back office support for an internet service provider in my country. My job generally involves helping customers as I can over the phone, and if it's something that needs to be done in person, I'll dispatch technicians to investigate the customer's lines and equipment in the home. Oftentimes get customers calling to demand technicians to come in person over issues that can honestly be solved by either turning a modem off and on again or something like the customer's TV being on the wrong input settings, etc. These are sometimes amusing and I have a lot of stories, but the one that happened the other day is by far the most amazing. A customer called me to complain that his internet has been ridiculously slow over the past few days and he wanted someone to come and look into the issue. After getting the customer's information, I pull up his account and modem on the system, and after pinging the modem I notice that there are no issues as far as I can detect. So I try to get more information from the customer. Usually you find out that the customer is struggling because they are using some website to pirate shitty low quality movies, or they are on a low bandwidth package and trying to run 2 PS4s and stream on 5 other devices at the same time. The conversation is as follows. Me. How long has this been an issue, sir? Him. Over the past 2 or 3 days. Me. Checks his account to see the data plan he is currently paying for. Well, sir, I see you are on the minimum plan at the moment. When you do a speed test, what results do you get? Him. When I do a test, I am pulling give speed for our maximum plan. Me. I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat that? Him. I'm getting the maximum plan speeds. Me. Sir, are you aware that you are paying for our minimum plan? Him. Yes, I am aware, but I'm getting maximum speed and it is still slow, so can you please bump it up more then? Me. Sir, you're aware that you're getting the maximum speed plans while paying for minimum speeds and asking me to give you more speed? Him. Yes, because your internet is so slow and I need more. Me. Well, what issue are you having exactly? Him. Everyone on YouTube and anything else works fine, but my messages are taking a long time to send. Me. Well, sir, I'm sorry, but that issue would be with your messaging app and not the internet service. Him. Can you make my internet faster anyway so the messages will send? Me. Well, I'm going to have to resync your modem on the system so you get the speeds you're actually paying for. Him. Why would you do that when the internet is slow? Me. Because that's what you're actually paying for? Him. That's not what I asked you to do. Me. Well, it's what I need to do, sir. If you have any issues, you can always apply for our maximum package. Him. But that's not what I want you to do. Me. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but that's what I'm doing. Please have a nice day. Honestly, I'm really not sure what he expected to happen. Thank you. Next. Just a quickie, we have a new user here. Highly educated engineer who just can't seem to understand the basics. We use print servers here. Each printer is labeled with the name and I put the shortcut to the print servers share on everyone's desktop. It's labeled Add a Site Printer where site is the name of the town we live in. You double click the Add a Printer icon. Find the printer name in the list and double click it. In seconds the printer is added. Last week the new guy wants me to help him add a printer. So I show him how. Double click the Add a Site Printer icon. Find the printer in the list and double click it. 30 seconds or less later you have the printer added to your system. The next day I get another call from the same guy. Again, I show him how to double click the Add a Printer icon. Choose the name off the list. Double click it and it's added. Later the same day I see him milling around my office door while I'm on the phone with another user. He's agitated and complaining to Mr. Big Boss. I overhear snippets of conversation. I've been trying to print to the color printer for the last 2 hours. I can't get it set up. After I get done with the other user on the phone he marches in and starts laying into me. I've tried everything. I can't get this printer added. I've tried Bluetooth, which is not even enabled. USB. I don't know where he got the cable long enough and the printer doesn't even have a USB connector. And networking. Ding. Ding ding, at least he's on the right track. You have got to make these things more user accessible. Mr. Big Boss is lurking in the hallway, I guess seeing how I would handle it. I again reminded him about the Add a Site Printer icon and asked if he used it. No, but you need to make the printers available various ways to make it easy for us. I masked up, then took his laptop, wiped it down, this was during the COVID-19 crisis, and added the printer in about 10 seconds. I sent a test print and could hear the printer start up and the print disappear from the queue. I reminded him yet again about the Add a Site Printer icon and how easy it was to use. I could see Mr. Big Boss in the hallway smiling and rolling his eyes. I don't think this new guy is going to be here very long. Thank you. Next. So, I used to work in IT tech support for one of the UK's largest medical care providers. We provided 75% of the staff with iPads to access information. Now, a lot of the time we don't have any problems, other than the occasional cracked screen. However, one time we did have a seriously odd one. So, a very sweet nurse called our support department, claiming that her iPad wouldn't turn on. So as standard procedure, we asked her to come up to the office where we had a loaner iPad that we could quickly replace us with, whilst it was being looked at. When she arrived with us, she was showing us how her iPad wasn't working. After a quick look at her device, we noticed she had it back to front. So, we proceed to turn it over so we can look at the screen, which worked perfectly fine. It was at this point, she exclaimed, I wondered why the back was flashing when I pressed the power button, and why the power button had switched sides. Well, my colleague and I were both totally speechless at this point, as she left us, thanking us for fixing her iPad. TLDR, sweet old lady complains about broken iPad screen, only to find out she's using it back to front.